Thank you. My name is Thellman, and I'm here at the Evangelical Theological Seminary Vice Dean for Academic Affairs. I want to talk about three things in the 7 minutes. The problem, a paradigm, and praxis. So 3 P's. Now, what's the problem? Well, we've already talked about a few problems, but I think the big one that comes out in different ways is schools have few students. Pastors have indicated we need more leaders that are trained, and yet, so where are they coming from? Pastor Dominier said he's noticed there aren't those students that have that call. That's the problem. We have few potential theology students. Why? Well, in our region here, and probably in the countries that are represented, there are just generally not that many evangelical Christians to draw from. And yet, as we've already talked about, we have a good number of schools. So how do we? I mean, that's a question we've already brought up. So I want to present to you a paradigm and an idea that doesn't necessarily answer that question in full, but it presents a possibility. So maybe instead of praxis, I should say possibility at this stage. First, I want to talk about a different paradigm for education. It's kind of building on what we heard last night from Professor Ott. We talked about reflective practitioners and the idea that education is not necessarily top-down, but coming alongside. And so thinking about that, actually thinking about this before, a word came to mind from the Greek New Testament. And since we were also told that English is imprecise, why not be more precise and go to Greek? So there's a word, paraklesis, which is translated differently. It could mean, it's translated sometimes to appeal to someone. The verb is parakaleo, but an appeal or a lifting of someone's spirits or comfort or consolation. Quite literally, para means beside, and kaleo to call beside someone. Well, the Greek dictionary the most prominent Greek dictionary says that the noun paraklesis is the act of emboldening another in belief or course of action. And that was interesting because you have both belief and action, which we've talked about. So is this a sort of a different way of thinking about education? Didaskalia is the word for teaching or instruction, but it's often coupled with the idea of paraklesis in various New Testament texts. For example, 1 Timothy 4:3. Pay attention to reading or devote yourselves to the public reading of Scripture, to paraklesis and to didaskalia. What if we shifted our paradigm and thought about education more in the sense of being alongside students as they pursue, of course, while also instructing them, but this idea of exhortation and encouragement. It's a little bit of a paradigm shift for a teacher. But also in another way, this idea is helpful for me. Because we often think of theological education as coming from an institution that is established. We have our students, we teach them courses, we give them a degree, and they go forward. But there's a wider population of students out there in all of our cities who attend the university. Many of them are those who are Christians, right? They may be some of the best and brightest people in your churches. And the temptation has always been, well, let's take them and make them pastors. But maybe by doing that, we actually are working against a greater benefit. What if we thought about how can we educate them theologically alongside of their university studies, so that we equip them to be lay leaders, people who are in their communities and in their churches, able to lead small groups, able to witness in their community, able to financially support their churches. What if we come up with an educational paradigm that helps these kind of students, and at the same time helps them to understand their calling, that their vocational calling is not separate from their calling as Christians, that actually God may very well be calling them into a particular area in order to bring the gospel to that area in the way they live and work. I'm a beneficiary of Christian liberal arts education in the United States. I went to Wheaton College for my graduate studies. I would love for there to be a Christian college in Eastern and Central Europe. I'm not sure that that's possible. But what is possible is on a micro level, in places where there are universities, that schools might be able to come alongside, open up our dorms for university students and accept them into a particular program. And that's our idea. That's our possibility. And so what we're suggesting right now is a program called ISCUS, which is an acronym which is translated to Institute for the Study of Christian Discipleship and Worldview. It's still at an idea stage, but it's an exciting idea because we have the possibility of here bringing students into our campus community. They become part of the Christian community here, and we could offer them basic, in parallel to their university studies, basic biblical and theological training, and narrowly focused seminars in worldview and discipleship, and help them to answer the kind of questions, or think about the kind of questions that they will be confronted with in their particular professional calling. How do I succeed as a faithful Christian in business? And I know we're going to hear some things related to that later, but and it's not totally unrelated from what Cornelius has already talked about. But from an educational standpoint, I think this is a great opportunity for schools to sort of rethink what our ultimate goals are. Do we need to give everybody a theology degree, or can we maybe use our resources, our teachers, to help students who have different vocational callings but who have a desire and a hunger to serve God? And so some of the goals we would have in this is empowering students to live these kind of faithful Christian lives. And as an institution, we could be more of a faithful Christian witness within the university context. This would be a little more intense than a typical campus ministry, by providing supplemental courses and these sort of seminars that I spoke about. And really we're seeking after integrating faith and learning and leadership. There would also be a possibility, for just joining a network of mentors who are Christians who are actively involved in that particular calling in the wider context. So I'm out of time. Thank you and we'll hopefully get a chance to talk more.
Thank you.